On the eve of the wedding, I was setting up our new apartment and accidentally broke the watch Julian Vance had received as a gift from his first love. For that, he slapped me 6 times. Get out of my sight. How dare you touch Isabel's things? After 3 months of silence, he called his assistant. Inform my fiancé to be at City Hall tomorrow for our civil ceremony. The assistant was stunned. Sir, your fiancé announced her engagement to the wealthiest man in the country a month ago. They're already married. When Julian Vance landed the 5th slap, I could barely hear anything. After the 6th strike, he pointed to the shattered watch on the floor, his gaze as cold as if he were looking at a maid who didn't know her place. Get out of my sight! How dare you touch Isabel's things? I didn't cry. I simply bent down, picked up the engagement ring he had knocked off my finger, and put it in my purse. At the same time, I pressed the backup button on the smart home system in the living room. Tomorrow was our scheduled day to get married at City Hall. This apartment, our future home, was something I had meticulously put together over the past 3 months. I visited 5 different stores to choose the curtains. The sofa was delivered under my personal supervision. I even personally checked the color temperature of the lamp in the foyer before approving it. Tonight, I just wanted to unpack the last box of items in the study. The watch was lying in the top drawer of the desk. No box, no dust bag, just sitting under a stack of old airline tickets. When I pulled the drawer, the track jammed. I tugged harder, and the back of my hand scraped against the corner. The jolt of pain made me flinch, and the watch slid off the edge of the drawer. The crystal on the watch face cracked. I froze, not even having time to crouch down and look, when the study door burst open. Julian stormed into the room. The first thing he looked at was not the blood on my hand or my pale face, but the watch. His expression changed instantly. Cassandra Hayes, who gave you permission to touch this? It was an accident, I tried to explain. I was clearing out the drawer, and it just fell. I didn't finish my sentence before the first slap seared across my face. It threw me sideways, and my temple hit the corner of the desk. My vision went dark. He didn't stop. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th slaps sent me stumbling backward. My lower back hit a bookshelf, and I only managed to stay on my feet by bracing my hands on the desk. Julian's eyes were bloodshot, as if I hadn't broken a watch, but his entire life. This is the watch Isabel gave me for my 18th birthday, he seethed. She saved up for 3 months, setting aside her allowance. Cassandra, what right did you have to touch it? I tasted blood in my mouth. I looked at him and suddenly realized how strange and ridiculous he seemed. 3 years ago, on my birthday, he had confessed his love to me, saying, Cassandra, you are not a substitute for anyone. 2 years ago, drunk, he had held me and said, my home is your home now. 6 months ago, he had tossed his ID on the table with the words, let's not drag this out, we'll get married next spring. But now, because of Isabel Sterling's old watch, he had given me 6 slaps. When I spoke, my voice was hoarse and unfamiliar. Julian, I'm bleeding. He sneered coldly. So you can still feel pain? I held up my hand for him to see. There was a long scratch across the back of it, blood trickling down my fingers and dripping onto the light-colored carpet, leaving ugly red stains. He glanced at it for a split second and then looked away. Don't play the victim. All these years Isabel was gone. This watch was the only thing I had with me. You knew perfectly well how much it meant to me, and you deliberately broke it right in front of my eyes, didn't you? I straightened up. So, in his eyes, even my accidental injury was a calculated act. At that moment, his phone rang. A video call from Isabel. Julian answered almost instantly, his tone softening at once. Isabelle? A woman's face appeared on the screen, and a soft voice followed. Julian, are you still at your place? Did I interrupt you and Cassandra? She said my name so familiarly, as if we were friends. Julian glanced at me, the anger still simmering in his eyes. It's fine. She just made a mess of things here. Isabel paused. What happened? Julian aimed the camera at the broken watch on the floor. There was a moment of silence from the other end, and then she said quietly, well, it's just an old watch. Cassandra probably didn't mean to. Don't fight with her over me. She spoke gently, but I clearly saw a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Julian was even more moved. You're always like this, thinking of everyone but yourself. I stood nearby, with a swollen face and a bleeding hand, like a complete joke. You two are getting your license tomorrow, aren't you? Isabel said softly. Don't let me ruin your day. Julian looked up at me and said coldly, we'll hold off on the wedding for now. Until she apologizes for this watch, I'm not taking her to City Hall. I let out a small, quiet laugh. What are you laughing at? Julian frowned. I didn't answer. I just walked over to the coffee table in the living room, took the engagement ring out of my purse, and placed it next to the documents we were supposed to take to the city clerk's office tomorrow. The ring clinked against the glass surface. Julian's face darkened. Cassandra, what are you doing now? I took my passport and a copy of my birth certificate and put them in my bag. I won't touch your things anymore. He must have thought I was joking. Scared now, are you? I walked around the shattered glass on the floor and headed for the exit. As I reached the foyer, his voice, choked with rage, came from behind me. If you walk out that door today, don't expect me to show up at City Hall tomorrow. I paused for a second but didn't turn back. Fine. As soon as the door closed, a cold draft from the stairwell hit my face. Only then did I feel the burning sting on my cheek. The elevator mirror reflected my face. One side was swollen and red. The corner of my lip was split. My hair was a mess, and there was blood on the cuff of my white shirt. I stared at my reflection for a few seconds, then took out my phone and took a picture. Then I called Chloe. She answered quickly. Cassie? Are you still at the apartment this late? Chloe, can you take me to the hospital? Her voice changed immediately. What happened? I watched the floor numbers change. Julian hit me. There was a 3-second silence on the other end, followed by the sound of a chair being knocked over. Stay right there. Don't move. I'm coming now. Half an hour later, Chloe met me at the entrance to the building. Her eyes immediately turned red. She wanted to curse, but was afraid of hurting me. Reaching out to support me, she didn't even dare to touch my face. Has he lost his mind? I got into the car. The hand I used to buckle my seatbelt was trembling. He hasn't lost his mind, I said, watching the streetlights fly by. He's just confident I won't go anywhere. In the emergency room, the doctor frowned as he examined my face. Domestic violence? I remained silent. Chloe answered for me. Her fiancé beat her. The doctor looked up at me but asked no more questions. He just stated the facts. Soft tissue contusion on the face, laceration at the corner of the lip, cut on the back of the hand, contusion on the temple. Do you want me to document this for a police report? Yes, I answered. Chloe squeezed my hand. I didn't look at her, afraid that if I did, I would start crying. It was 2 a.m. by the time I received the report. I sat on a bench in the hospital corridor, photographed the document, and saved it to my cloud storage. Then, I downloaded the backup from the smart home system. I had installed the system myself for our future convenience. There were basic security cameras in the living room, foyer, and study. Julian didn't know I had configured automatic cloud backups. I had done it for security reasons, never thinking the first person I'd need protection from would be him. Seeing what I was doing on my phone, Chloe asked quietly, "What are you going to do?" I named the cloud folder the night before and looked up at her. The most important thing is not to cry. I turned off the phone screen. First, I need to save everything that's necessary. Chloe's eyes grew even redder. At 3 a.m, Julian finally sent a message. Just 4 words. Made up your mind? I stared at the message, my heart feeling as if it were being sawed by a dull knife. No apology, no concern, no question about where I had gone, and certainly not a word about my injuries. He was sure I would come back. Sure that for the sake of tomorrow's wedding, I would swallow tonight's 6 slaps. I didn't reply. I turned off his access to my location, removed him from the family access to the apartment's smart locks, and revoked the authorization for automatic transfers from my bank account to Vance Global's temporary account. After doing all this, I leaned against the hospital corridor wall and, for the first time in a long time, took a deep breath. My phone vibrated again. A friend request from Isabel. The note contained a single sentence. Cassie, the watch really isn't important. Don't blame Julian. I stared at that line and suddenly laughed. The watch wasn't important, but the 6 slaps on my face were. My dignity was important. And the part of me that I had given him, piece by piece, over 3 years, was also important. I declined the request. In the reason field, I wrote a short note. I don't collect trash. The next morning at 9, the appointment reminder for City Hall arrived. I was sitting on the floor of my old apartment, with all the bank statements and contracts from the past 3 years spread out before me. The notification chimed 3 times. I didn't turn it off. Chloe came over with a bag of ice and pressed decline herself. Don't look. I took the ice and pressed it to my face. The pain was sobering. Today was supposed to be the day Julian and I got married at City Hall. I had even bought a new white shirt a week ago, ironed it, and hung it in the most prominent spot in the closet. Just yesterday, Julian had said that after City Hall, We would go to his parents for dinner, and he had asked me not to dress too simply, so his mother wouldn't find fault. Now, that white shirt was hanging in the closet of that apartment, and I would never go back for it. At 10 in the morning, Julian called. I didn't answer. When he called for the third time, Chloe couldn't take it anymore. He still has the nerve to call. I stared at his name on the screen until the call ended on its own. A minute later, a message arrived. Cassandra, if we don't get married today, you'd better not regret it. 10 seconds later, another one. Isabel keeps defending you, and you haven't even apologized. I put my phone aside and continued sorting through the documents. Chloe looked over my shoulder. What's all this? These are the funds I contributed to Vance Global's projects over the last 3 years, and also the money Julian borrowed from me for personal expenses. She was stunned. That much? I opened a spreadsheet. The year before last, Vance Global had a real estate project and ran into a cash flow problem. He said he was short just $5 million and would pay it back in 3 months, tops. I cashed out the returns from a trust fund my father left me and gave it to him. Chloe's face darkened. Did he pay it back? Half of it, I said, scrolling to the notes. The rest, he said, we wouldn't have to count after the wedding since we'd be one family. Chloe gave a bitter laugh. But when he was hitting you, he counted everything perfectly. He remembers Isabel's old watch from 10 years ago, but your millions are already one family. I stayed silent. Those words hurt more than yesterday's slaps. At noon, Isabel posted on Instagram. The photo showed her sitting on the sofa in Julian's study, holding the broken watch. The caption read, "Old things can break, but old feelings never do. Thank you for remembering." The first comment was from Julian's mother. Some things should never have been touched by outsiders in the first place. Seeing this, Chloe almost smashed her phone. Outsiders? You and Julian were about to get married, and she calls you an outsider. I stared at the comment for a few seconds, took a screenshot, and saved it. Then, I opened my notes and wrote the first line. Evidence of the Vance family's attitude, defining me as an outsider. Chloe looked at me in surprise. You're even writing this down? I have to. I never used to keep score because I thought you shouldn't count in love. Only now do I realize that the one who doesn't count is the easiest one to fall victim to someone else's calculations. At 3 in the afternoon, Julian finally lost his patience. He sent a voice message. I put it on speaker. His voice was icy. Cassandra, I'm giving you one day. Come to the apartment tonight, explain the watch situation to Isabel, and apologize to her. We can postpone the ceremony, but don't test my patience. Hearing this, Chloe exploded. He wants you to apologize to Isabel? I converted the voice message to text, took a screenshot, and sent him my first reply. Julian, we need to discuss canceling the engagement. He replied almost instantly. Are you threatening me? I wrote, I'm informing you. This time he didn't reply. In the evening, his mother called. Her voice was as arrogant as ever. Cassie, I know you two are having a difficult time. But we can't let a single argument destroy everything. Think of the families, the business. A public scandal right now would be a disaster for everyone, including you. Julian can be hot-tempered, but this needs to be handled privately. I started a recording. Listen, he hit me 6 times. Julian's mother paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, there was no trace of guilt in her voice, only more irritation. But you were the one who broke the watch Isabel gave him. Men can't stand it when women go through their old things. Since you're planning to marry into the Vance family, you need to protect our public image. What about my injuries? I asked. You're a woman, don't be so sensitive. Things happen between a husband and wife. I looked at the diagnosis on the medical report and felt the absurdity of the situation. We weren't even husband and wife yet. Exactly, Julian's mother sneered. That's why you should appreciate this opportunity. The Vance family is willing to accept you, not so you can throw tantrums. We're having a family dinner tomorrow night. Come over, clear the air, pay for the watch, apologize. Don't put Julian in an awkward position. And if I don't come? Cassie? Julian's mother's voice hardened. Cassie, be realistic. Do you really want to turn this into a public war? Lawyers, tabloids? It will get very ugly. The Vance family will do whatever it takes to protect its reputation. Is that a fight you're prepared for? I listened to the recording, the seconds ticking by. Fine, I'll be there. Chloe, standing beside me, was alarmed. Why are you going there? To let them humiliate you? I hung up and saved the recording. To get my things back. What things? I closed the file folder. the dignity I left at the Vance house. The next evening, I arrived at the Vance's home. The swelling on my face hadn't completely subsided. Foundation couldn't hide it, and only made me look more pathetic. Julian's mother opened the door, but didn't ask about my well-being. She frowned. "Why did you come looking like this? If relatives see you, they'll think we've been mistreating you." "They won't think, they'll see," I replied calmly. Her expression changed. Many people were sitting in the living room. Julian's aunt, his uncle, a few cousins, and Isabel. Isabel was wearing a light blue dress and sitting next to Julian. A new watch adorned her wrist. Seeing me, she immediately stood up, her eyes turning red. "Cassie, you're here. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." As soon as she spoke, the Vance relatives began to chide me. "Isabel is so understanding. Cassie, you shouldn't be so petty. It's just a watch. Pay for it, and it's over. Why take it to the point of canceling the engagement? It will start ugly rumors." I stood in the middle of the living room like a criminal on trial. Julian sat on the sofa and didn't even get up. He looked at me and tossed out a command as if it were a favor. "Sit." I didn't sit. I placed my bag next to me and took out a folder of documents. Julian's mother, assuming it was a compensation agreement, relaxed slightly. "Now that's more like it. If you'd admitted your mistake earlier, this would all be over." I opened the folder. The first document was the medical report for assault. The second was proof of payment for the apartment. The third was the renovation contract and receipts. The fourth was the detailed statement of my financial transfers to Vance Global. I laid them out one by one on the coffee table. The living room gradually fell silent. "Cassandra, what is the meaning of this?" Julian frowned. I looked at him. "It means the engagement is canceled." "You're starting this again?" His mother's face darkened immediately. "Not starting again. I'm officially informing you." Julian shot up from his seat. Isabel instinctively grabbed his sleeve. "Julian, don't." "Cassandra is probably just emotional." I glanced at her. "Miss Sterling, don't worry, I am perfectly calm right now." I pushed the medical report toward Julian's mother. "First, Julian Vance assaulted me. I reserve the right to press charges." Then I slid over the documents for the apartment. "Second, I paid for 70% of the down payment on the penthouse. I am the majority owner. If the Vance family continues to use it, I expect you to either pay market rate rent or vacate the premises within 30 days. Finally, I placed the transfer statements in front of Julian. Third, Vance Global owes me a debt of $2.8 million. My lawyer will be sending a formal demand letter. Julian stared at me intently. He was probably realizing for the first time that the Cassandra who could be soothed with a single word also knew how to count so precisely. Finally, he let out a cold laugh. "Cassandra, are you really going to destroy our 3-year relationship over something so trivial?" I looked at his annoyed and contemptuous face and suddenly stopped feeling the pain. 6 slaps are trivial in your eyes? I picked up the engagement ring from the table. Then calling off the engagement isn't such a big deal for me either. I placed the ring in front of him. "Julian, there will be no wedding." The ring fell onto the coffee table with a soft clink that seemed to shatter all the false respectability in the Vance living room. His mother was the first to recover. She jumped up, her face distorted. "Cassandra Hayes, do you have any idea what you're saying?" "I do." I closed the folder of documents. "I'm saying there will be no wedding. The engagement is over." Julian stared at the ring, his gaze growing colder. "Are you done with your little drama?" I smiled. "Why do you all love that word so much?" Julian's aunt frowned. "Cassie, it's not becoming for a woman to be so domineering. Julian was wrong to hit you, of course, but it was in the heat of the moment. The fact that a man values old feelings doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Now you're publicly breaking off the engagement, leaving him no way out." I turned to her. "And when he was hitting me, did he leave me a way out?" The aunt fell silent, her face turning shades of red and pale. Isabel immediately chimed in softly. "Cassie, don't misunderstand. Julian and I are really just old friends. That watch isn't worth much. If it makes you uncomfortable, I can ask him not to have it repaired." I looked at her. "You'll ask him not to repair it? Then why are you here today wearing a new watch sitting next to him?" She froze for a moment. I pointed to her wrist. "Julian bought that for you this morning, right? You didn't turn off the location tag on your Instagram post, and the sales consultant even left you a comment." Isabel's face went pale. Julian frowned. "Are you stalking her?" "Is a public Instagram post considered stalking?" I countered. Someone in the living room pulled out their phone. Soon, the post with the location tag from the luxury boutique was found. Isabel's eyes instantly filled with tears. I was just worried Julian was having a hard time, so I wanted to cheer him up a little. He insisted on buying it. I tried to refuse. You refused, but you wore it to the Vance family dinner. I nodded. You have a real talent for choosing the right moments to refuse, Miss Sterling. Julian's face finally darkened completely. Cassandra, Isabel has been through a lot. Don't attack her. I had heard that line far too many times. Isabel's health is fragile, so I shouldn't be upset. Isabel just returned to the country, so I should give way. Isabel has suffered in the past, so I shouldn't trouble her. But the wounds on my face hadn't healed, and the bandage on my hand was still on. And no one had said a word about how Cassandra might be hurting, too. I took out my phone and opened the hospital report. Julian, look closely. I turned the screen toward him. Soft tissue damage to the face, a laceration at the corner of my lip, a contusion on my temple. You say her health is fragile and I shouldn't upset her. What about me? He glanced at it, a flicker of something like doubt in his eyes, but his pride immediately suppressed it. If you hadn't deliberately broken the watch, I wouldn't have raised my hand. So you admit you hit me? I nodded. Julian's mother immediately interjected. Cassandra, have you been recording us? I didn't answer. Silence was the answer. His mother's face grew even uglier. You're not even part of this family yet, and you're already scheming against your mother-in-law. And if I hadn't schemed, I looked at her, you would have forced me to apologize to Isabel today, wouldn't you? Julian's mother was choking on her anger. Such a schemer. Julian, it's a good thing you two aren't married yet. Hearing this, Julian seemed to remember something. He looked at me and sneered. Cassandra, do you think you can scare me by calling off the engagement? I remained silent. He took a step forward. You've been with me for 3 years. Everyone in our circle knows you're Julian Vance's woman. If you break off the engagement now, everyone will say it was me who dumped you. Immediately, one of the relatives chimed in. Yes, a spotless public image is the most important thing. No one will care about the truth. They only look at the result. Cassie, don't be foolish. A man like Julian, if you leave him, you won't find anyone better. Listening to these words, I suddenly understood why the Vance family was so confident. It wasn't that they didn't know I was hurt. They were just certain I couldn't live without them. I took another document from my bag. It was the title deed showing the shared ownership of the penthouse. I held it out to Julian's mother. In this penthouse, the furniture in the master bedroom, where you are currently living, was paid for by me. The smart home system in Julian's second-floor study was designed and installed by me. Even that floor-to-ceiling bookshelf you were bragging about to relatives last month was custom-made from my design. Julian's mother's face froze. You can believe my reputation is ruined, I continued. But the money you owe me and the apartment you live in, all of it will have to be returned. Julian's uncle mumbled quietly. You're almost family. Why count things like this? Almost doesn't count, I looked at him, cutting off any further discussion. Isabel coughed. Julian immediately turned to support her. What's wrong? Nothing, she shook her head. It's just a little hard to breathe. Don't mind me, deal with Cassandra first. The more she said things like that, the more worried Julian became for her. He turned back to me, the patience in his eyes finally gone. Cassandra, tonight you either take back the ring and apologize to Isabel, or don't come begging me later. I looked at him. You think I'll beg you? 3 days, he said confidently, holding up 3 fingers. I'll give you 3 days. After 3 days, you'll cool down and come back on your own. I laughed. All right, I took the folder of documents. We'll see in 3 days. When I left the Vance's house, it had started to rain. I didn't have an umbrella. Chloe's car was parked by the curb. Seeing me, she immediately ran out with an umbrella. Well, how did it go? I got into the car and the first thing I said was, they told me to come back in 3 days. The classic Vance family arrogance, Chloe scoffed. I copied the audio recordings to 2 separate cloud drives and sent them to my lawyer. They think I'm calling off the engagement in a fit of anger. And are you? I watched the raindrops on the window. Before, I might have just been angry. I would have waited for Julian to start winning me back. I would have softened at a single "don't be mad." I would have sought reconciliation myself after 3 days of his cold shoulder. But not this time. At 11 that night, Julian sent a photo. A receipt for the watch repair. The cost, $50,000. Beneath it was his message. I've emailed you the invoice. Pay it within 3 days. I looked at the line and almost laughed. He had slapped me 6 times, hadn't said a single word of apology, and now he was demanding I pay for Isabel's watch. I sent him photos in reply. The hospital bill, the assault report, the retainer agreement with my lawyer. And I wrote, I've prepared your bills too. This time, he didn't reply instantly. 10 minutes later, he called. I declined it. He called again. I turned off my phone. The next morning, my lawyer sent me the finalized notice of engagement termination and a pre-litigation demand letter for the debt collection. I read everything carefully, signed it, and scanned it. At 10 in the morning, Vance Global's legal department received the first letter from my lawyer. Along with it was an official notice of the withdrawal of my financial guarantee for their project. At noon, Julian called Chloe. She put him on speaker. His voice was choked with fury. Where is Cassandra? She's dead, Chloe drawled lazily. Put her on the phone, he roared. Mr. Vance, Chloe chuckled. You said she'd come crawling back to you in 3 days. It's only been 1 day. What's the rush? There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. Tell her not to regret this, Julian seethed. Chloe looked at me. I shook my head. Chloe simply hung up. In the afternoon, I went to the management office of our residential complex to request the security footage from the elevator and corridor. The manager hesitated at first. Miss Hayes, Mr. Vance said that all documents related to this apartment now go through him only. I placed the title deed in front of him. Look carefully at who the majority owner is. The manager's expression changed. Miss Hayes, please wait a moment. 20 minutes later, I had the footage from the elevator camera, showing me leaving the apartment with a swollen face. In the video, I was wearing a white shirt with bloodstains, my gait unsteady. No one followed me out. I saved the video and, standing in the lobby of the management office, suddenly felt a weight that had been on my heart for a long time begin to lift. It turns out that liberation isn't an instantaneous process. It's one report, one video, one bill, one decision step by step. You pull yourself out of the mud. In the evening, Julian sent a long message. Cassandra, everything you're doing now is just making you a stranger to me. Isabel would never be so petty and count every little thing. I looked at the name Isabel and slowly typed a reply. Then I wish you two a long and happy life together. After sending it, I blocked him. After blocking Julian, I lived in silence for a full 3 days. On the 4th day, his mother called me from a new number. I didn't answer. On the 5th day, Vance Global's lawyers contacted my attorney, saying they were willing to discuss the debt but hoped I would withdraw the evidence of domestic abuse. I told my lawyer to reply, the terms are non-negotiable, only the repayment of the debt. On the 7th day, Isabel published a long post. She didn't name names, only wrote that a conflict had arisen because of her, that she was very sorry, and that she hoped a certain young woman wouldn't destroy her happiness over a moment of impulse. Attached to the post was a photo of her wrist, adorned with the new watch. In the comments, everyone was consoling her. Some wrote that she was too kind, some that the current girlfriend should be more magnanimous, and some that if you can't accept an old watch, you can't build a life together. I took screenshots one after another. You're not going to respond? Chloe fumed. It's not time yet, I shook my head. She didn't understand. They're dragging you through the mud like this, and you're just waiting? I turned off my phone. She's posting this to provoke me into a fight. As soon as I get into a public spat, the Vance family can claim I've gone mad with jealousy. I don't need to win an argument. I need to make it so they won't even have a chance to defend themselves later. Chloe looked at me for a long time and finally sighed. You've really changed. I placed the collected materials in a folder. Getting slapped is a sobering experience. I spent the next month focused on 3 things. First, I moved back into my old apartment and made a list of all my belongings in the marital penthouse, sending a demand through my lawyer for Julian to return them within a specified period. Second, I contacted the design team that worked on the penthouse to re-register the design copyrights, which were initially under Julian's name, to my own. Third, I annulled all personal authorizations related to Vance Global, including temporary guarantees, private loans, supplier recommendations, and the shared use of design resources. At first, Vance Global paid no mind, until one of their hotel renovation projects, ready for launch, was halted by the client for reassessment due to the revocation of my design license. That evening, Julian finally called my studio from his office phone. The assistant asked if I would take the call. If it's business, transfer him to my lawyer. If it's personal, don't connect him. 10 minutes later, a massive bouquet of white roses was delivered to the studio. The card was in Julian's handwriting. Cooled off? Come back. I looked at the bouquet and scoffed. Just then, Chloe arrived. Seeing the card, she almost grimaced. Is this his idea of an apology? I put the card back. This isn't an apology, it's an order to return. Because he thinks I haven't gone far. He doesn't realize I've already started burning the bridges. I gave the bouquet to the barista at the coffee shop on the first floor. That same evening, Isabel posted again. Some people never learn to appreciate things. They'll understand when they've truly lost them. Attached to the post was a photo of an identical bouquet of white roses. Seeing this, Chloe swore. Is he buying them in bulk? I wasn't angry, I just took a screenshot and saved it. In the second month, my lawyer informed me that the Vance family wanted to schedule a meeting. The location was a conference room at the Vance Global office. I agreed. Not out of soft-heartedness, but because it was time to collect my debts. In the conference room, Julian sat at the head of the table, his mother beside him. Surprisingly, Isabel was there too. When I sat down, my lawyer placed the documents on the table. Julian's mother spoke first. Cassie, this has dragged on long enough, and the rumors are getting ugly. We, the Vances, are prepared to make a concession. You reduce the debt by half, and Julian will also forget about you breaking the watch. I almost laughed. Listen, I broke the watch by accident. He hit me on purpose. The debt owed by Vance Global is a real debt. Don't mix up three different things. Julian's mother's face darkened. Isabel gently intervened. Cassie, my watch has already been repaired. You don't have to worry about it. I looked at her. The person who sent me the repair invoice wasn't Julian. It was you. Her face went pale. Julian frowned. Cassandra, Isabel is trying to help you. Thanks, but no thanks, I nodded. The atmosphere in the conference room grew tense. My lawyer pushed the detailed debt statement forward. Mr. Vance, if your side refuses to negotiate, we will officially file a lawsuit and request a lien on the company's assets. Julian's expression finally changed. He looked at me intently and said quietly, Cassandra, do you really have to push it this far? I looked at him. And you? When you delivered the sixth slap, you didn't stop either. A shadow of confusion flickered in his eyes. It was his first real reaction to the events of that night in the past 3 months, but it was too late. The meeting ended with nothing resolved. As I was leaving the Vance Global building, Isabel caught up with me. She stood on the steps, her voice quiet. Cassie, are you really prepared to give up everything? I stopped. She moved closer. Her face lacked the meekness she displayed around Julian. Instead, it held a poorly concealed sense of triumph. So what if you were with Julian for 3 years? He's still most attached to me. I turned on the voice recorder on my phone. She didn't notice. So you want him? I asked. Isabel laughed. Whether I want him or not isn't important. What's important is that the moment I come back, he won't look at anyone else. She looked me in the face, her voice dropping to a whisper. I knew where that watch was. And that day, before I called him, I knew you were in the apartment unpacking. My gaze turned cold. What are you trying to say? Isabel shrugged. Nothing much. Just a reminder that some places can't be filled, no matter how hard you try. With that, she turned and went back into the building. I remained standing there, slowly clenching my phone. The recording was still running. Chloe was waiting for me in the car. Seeing my face, she asked, What happened? I played her the recording. Halfway through, she swore. She did it on purpose. She knew where the watch was and deliberately provoked Julian to come back. I closed my eyes. She wanted me out of the picture right before the wedding. And Julian? I looked at the Vance Global building outside the window. He's just the most convenient weapon in her hands. In the 3rd month, Nathaniel Blackwood entered my life. He wasn't a savior descending from the heavens. We were acquainted. A year ago, I had redesigned an art hotel owned by his company. Nathaniel was the project lead. During our collaboration, he had seen me at my most vulnerable. Back then, Julian had canceled a meeting at the last minute, and I had to redo an entire presentation for a bid by myself the night before. Nathaniel didn't offer any empty condolences. He just turned on the lights in the conference room and handed me a cup of coffee. Miss Hayes, he had said, your design shouldn't have to pay the price for someone else's broken promises. I remembered that line for a long time. 3 months later, he invited me to a meeting again. This time, it was about the restoration project for the Blackwood family estate. After discussing business, he pushed a folder of documents toward me. My mother is very fond of your style, he began. We are about to start our largest project to date. The complete restoration of the Blackwood family estate. It's a multi-year legacy project. I want you to be the lead designer, An exclusive partner. He pushed a file across the table. A public announcement of a partnership at this level will send a powerful message. It will show you've moved on and aligned yourself with a project of prestige. It gives you an unassailable position to end the noise from your past. I looked at him. Mr. Blackwood, that's an incredible professional opportunity. He smiled. It's a partnership, Cassandra. One built on mutual respect and ambition. He wasn't offering me protection or revenge. He was offering me a platform, a way to rebuild on my own terms. The choice was entirely mine. Why me? I asked. Because you're the best, Nathaniel replied simply. And because you value your work as much as I value mine. I was silent for a long time. Then I picked up the pen. I accept. The moment the tip of the pen touched the paper, I suddenly remembered Julian's words. Cassandra, who would you even marry if you left me? Now, there was an answer. It didn't matter who I married. What mattered was that I could finally not marry him. The news of our engagement to Nathaniel was not immediately made public. We agreed to announce it after the Vance Global debt case went to court. But Isabel seemed to be in more of a hurry than I was. She began to appear by Julian's side more and more frequently. Charity galas, brand launches, Vance Global business receptions each time, she was dressed modestly and elegantly, standing half a step behind Julian, as if not seeking attention, but in a way that ensured everyone saw her. Rumors started to spread. Some said Julian Vance had broken off his engagement with Cassandra Hayes because his first love had returned. Others said Cassandra had made too ugly a scene, and the Vance family had long been dissatisfied with her. And some whispered that Isabel Sterling was the real future Mrs. Vance. I heard these whispers at a charity gala. The event was organized by the Blackwood Company. I was there as the designer for their family estate restoration project. As soon as I entered the hall, I was noticed. Light makeup couldn't completely hide the old scars, and the glances immediately became meaningful. Miss Hayes is here too. They say Mr. Vance will also be here tonight. This could be awkward. I took a glass of water, paying no attention. Chloe, who had come with me, asked if I wanted to move to a different table. Why hide? I shook my head. I've done nothing wrong. I'm not the one who should be hiding. Half an hour later, Julian appeared. He was in a black suit, with Isabel by his side. Upon entering the hall, Isabel's eyes immediately found me. Today, she wasn't wearing the new watch, but the old, repaired one. The strap was clearly replaced, and the cracks on the crystal were no longer visible. She elegantly rolled up her sleeve, as if afraid someone might not notice. God, she's unbelievable, Chloe whispered. She's wearing it just to spite you. I looked at that watch and suddenly thought it was a good thing. The more she rushed, the more mistakes she would make. Julian saw me too. He froze for a moment. He had lost weight in the past 3 months, and his eyes showed signs of fatigue. Seeing me standing at the main Blackwood table, he frowned. Isabel said gently, Julian, maybe we should go say hello? Cassie still seems to be angry. I turned and met her gaze. She was smiling innocently. Julian approached. His first question was, What are you doing here? I was invited, I replied indifferently. He glanced at my guest badge, his face darkening. You're still working on the Blackwood project? The contract hasn't been terminated, so yes. Cassandra? He lowered his voice. Vance Global and the Blackwood Company have important negotiations coming up. Don't cause a scene at an event like this. I almost laughed at his audacity. He came with Isabel, who was flaunting the repaired watch, and was asking me not to cause a scene. Don't worry, Mr. Vance. I put down my glass. Unlike you, I don't have a habit of throwing punches in public. His face froze. Isabel immediately stepped forward. Cassie, I'm truly sorry about that day. Julian is just too attached to old things, and he lost his temper. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I looked at her wrist. Miss Sterling, didn't you say the old watch wasn't important? She touched the watch and said quietly, It's not important. It's just a small memory of Julian's and my youth. I can't throw it away. You can't throw it away, so you brought it to the Blackwood Gala, I nodded. Her eyes turned red. You're misunderstanding me again. Enough, Julian intervened, annoyed. She's just wearing a watch. Why are you twisting her every word? I didn't bother to explain. I glanced at the time on my phone. Nathaniel's assistant had just texted that I needed to go backstage to check on the exhibition area. I need to step away, I told Chloe. But Isabel suddenly followed me. The corridor near the restrooms was quiet. She closed the door, and her meek expression vanished instantly. Cassandra Hayes, you have a lot of patience. I turned on the small recorder Chloe had given me, saying, just in case, for crazy people. I used to think it was an exaggeration. Now I realized it was a useful tool. I washed my hands, not looking at her. Did you want something? Isabel leaned against the wall, admiring the watch on her wrist. You know, yesterday Julian put this on my wrist himself. He said since the watch was fixed, some things should go back to their rightful place. I took a paper towel to dry my hands. And you're very proud of that. Of course I'm proud, she sneered. You were with him for 3 years, set up his apartment, cleaned up his company's messes, and in the end, you still lost to my old watch. I looked at her reflection in the mirror. You deliberately left that watch on the edge of the drawer. Isabel blinked. I just told Julian that old things shouldn't be left lying around. Who knew you were so clumsy? She approached me, her voice dropping even lower. Cassandra, don't resist. So what if you broke off the engagement? All it takes is one word from Julian, and you'll come back. I've seen plenty of your type. Those who love too much are the easiest to break. I looked up at her. Are you finished? She froze for a moment. I turned off the recorder and put it in my purse. Isabel's expression changed. You were recording? What are you afraid of? I scoffed. You didn't say anything wrong, did you? She tried to snatch my purse. I took a step back. She missed and hit her elbow on the sink, crying out in pain. The next second, the door flew open. Julian stood in the doorway. Isabel's face immediately turned red as she clutched her elbow. Julian, I'm fine. I just accidentally... The scene was painfully familiar. And, as expected, Julian looked at me. Cassandra, what did you do to her now? What did you see? I retorted. He fell silent. Isabel said quietly, Really, Cassie didn't push me. I just tripped. That sentence was worse than any accusation. Julian's face turned cold. Why have you become like this? I looked at him and was suddenly tired of arguing. Julian, you always believe only what you want to believe. I just don't want you to hurt Isabel, he frowned. Fine, I nodded. Then you remember this too. I pulled a copy of the engagement termination notice from my purse and held it out to him. From today on, there are no marital obligations between us. Who you protect and who you worry about is none of my concern. He didn't take the document. My hand was left hanging in the air. I simply let go. The notice fell to the floor. I walked past him in my high heels. Behind me, Julian's choked voice called out, Cassandra, you'll regret this. I didn't turn back. At the end of the corridor stood Nathaniel. He must have heard something but hadn't intervened. Only when I approached did he hand me a glass of water. The presentation is about to start. I took the water. Thank you. He glanced at my white knuckles. Should we postpone it? No need. I shook my head. That evening, as the lead designer, I presented the art hotel project. The spotlights shone on my face. Many in the audience could see the faint, lingering marks of my injuries. I didn't hide them. At the end of my speech, I said, in spatial design, the most important thing is not to fill, but to clear. If you don't remove the damaged structures, even the most beautiful decor will collapse. For a moment, the hall was silent. Nathaniel was the first to applaud. Then the applause grew louder. I saw Julian standing in the back rows. His expression was complex. Beside him stood Isabel, the old watch on her wrist glinting coldly in the light. She thought it was a victor's trophy. But she didn't know that from that evening on, that watch would cease to be a symbol of her and Julian's past love. It would become the first piece of evidence of her schemes against me. 3 days after the charity gala, I officially sent Julian the notice of engagement termination. When the lawyer sent confirmation, I was in my studio, working on the blueprints for the Blackwood estate. Chloe, lying on the sofa, watched me draw. Does it really not hurt anymore? I put down my pencil. It's impossible not to hurt at all. 3 years isn't 3 days. I really wanted to marry Julian. I thought we would have a home, we would have dinner in that apartment, we would argue about the color of the curtains and make up right away. But then I realized that the entire future I had so carefully planned was, in Julian's eyes, just something he could bestow upon me at any moment. If he wanted, we'd get married. If he was angry, we'd postpone. If he thought I was disobedient, he'd make me apologize. He never thought that I might not wait either. In the afternoon, my lawyer informed me that Julian had refused to accept the termination notice, claiming he had not consented to the dissolution. Keep sending it, I said. By notarized delivery. The lawyer chuckled. Miss Hayes, his consent is not required. If you don't want to register the marriage, legally, you are not in a marital relationship. I know, I said, signing the documents. But I want everyone to know. That evening, Julian came to my studio. The security at the front desk couldn't stop him. He burst into my office, bringing a cold wind with him. His face looked even worse than before. Chloe, sitting on the sofa, jumped up immediately. Mr. Vance, trespassing on private property is illegal. Julian ignored her, looking only at me. What are you trying to achieve? I closed my laptop. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. He threw the notice onto my desk. Cassandra, I didn't sign this. Whether you sign it or not doesn't change the outcome. The outcome? He sneered. Your so-called outcome is handing over our 3 years to be calculated by lawyers? You were the first to hand over my feelings to be trampled on by Isabel. I looked at him. His Adam's apple bobbed. It's not what you think between Isabel and me. Then what is it? I asked calmly. She wears the watch you repaired for her to parties. You buy her new ones. You allow her in the Vance Global offices, and you hit me 6 times because of her. Julian, which of these things did I misunderstand? He was silent. A long time passed before he said quietly, I really lost my temper that night. It was his first admission. But his next sentence brought me back to reality. But you shouldn't have touched that watch. I laughed. Chloe rolled her eyes. Mr. Vance, are your apologies defective? Did you get them from a wholesale warehouse? Julian's face darkened. I motioned for Chloe to stop. Julian, I'm not going to argue with you today. I am simply informing you of 3 things. I pushed the documents toward him. First, the engagement is terminated. The notice has been notarized and delivered. Second, the penthouse must be vacated by the deadline. The notice has been sent to you and your mother. Third, regarding the debt owed by Vance Global, I am officially filing a lawsuit. Are you trying to corner me? He stared at me. Not to corner you. I looked him in the eye. But to make you return what you owe me. He suddenly laughed. It was a cold laugh. Do you think the Blackwood family will help you for long? I froze. He caught my reaction, his gaze turning sharp. Don't think I don't know. Nathaniel Blackwood has been seeing you a lot lately. Cassandra, did you find yourself a patron in the Blackwoods just to spite me? So he had been looking into me. I leaned back in my chair. You can think of it that way. Julian's face instantly became hideous. You're disgusting. Chloe lunged forward, ready to curse, but I stopped her. I stood up and walked over to Julian. You call me disgusting because I no longer revolve around you? His eyes flickered. Before, when I stayed up nights redoing your projects, it was called understanding. When I poured money into Vance Global, it was one family. When I tolerated your flirtations with Isabel, it was magnanimous. And now that I've chosen someone else, it's called disgusting? The office was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioner. I pointed to the door. Julian, you love Isabel, right? Then go protect her. And stop interfering in my life, telling me who I can and cannot marry. His hands, hanging at his sides, slowly clenched into fists. Cassandra, just you dare marry Blackwood. You'll see. I looked at him. He left, slamming the door. Chloe was fuming. What a piece of work. He runs all over town with his little flame. But he won't let you move on. I sat back down in my chair. My fingers were slightly cold. Not from fear, from self-loathing for ever having loved such a man. That same evening, Vance Global started having problems. The Blackwood Company suspended their partnership negotiations. Not because Nathaniel was taking revenge for me, but because some of the design documents provided by Vance Global used materials from my studio without a license. Before, when Julian and I were on good terms, Vance Global used my design library by default, and I turned a blind eye. But now that I had revoked all permissions, those documents became a liability. Vance Global's lawyers called me all night. Their tone was obsequiously polite. Miss Hayes, Mr. Vance is very hopeful to speak with you again. We can compensate for the licensing fee, and the debt can be paid in installments. Through my lawyer, I replied. There was a pause on the other end. Mr. Vance said you should show some respect for your past feelings. I laughed. He erased those past feelings with his slaps. I hung up. The next day, Isabel updated her status. Some people say they've let go, but in reality, they take revenge at every turn. Why be so ugly to someone you once loved? This time, I didn't just silently take a screenshot. I went to my studio's official social media account and published a statement. The text was brief. Effective today, Our studio is terminating all non-licensed permissions for the use of our design materials by Vance Global. Any commercial use will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Regarding the violence and false rumors in my personal relationship, the matter has been handed over to my lawyers. Attached to the post was the legal case number. No complaints, no explanations. But it was enough. The comments exploded. People started asking what violence she was talking about. Someone dug up Isabel's previous insinuations. Someone else discovered that the appointment at City Hall on our planned wedding day had been canceled. For the first time, public opinion stopped revolving solely around the meek Isabel. Julian's mother texted me that same day. "Cassandra, did you really have to drag this out into the open? Do you have no regard for the Vance family's reputation?" I replied, "Reputations are lost because of one's own actions." She quickly texted back 3 words, "You ungrateful bitch." I stared at the screen and suddenly remembered my mother's words before she died. She said, "Cassie, never break your own back to fit into someone else's house." I didn't understand then. I understood now. I took a screenshot of Julian's mother's message and sent it to my lawyer. That evening, Nathaniel invited me to a meeting. He handed me the final version of the prenuptial agreement. The news can be announced next week. I looked at the agreement, not rushing to sign. He didn't rush me. "Aren't you afraid of being dragged into this?" I asked. "I am," he answered so directly that it took me aback. He smiled. "Blackwood Holdings is not a charity. I have my own interests at stake. But, Cassandra, I will not use you as a shield, and I will not place bets on your wounds. A partnership is a partnership. Respect is the foundation." I looked at the pen, thought for a long time, and signed. "Then make the announcement." A week later, the Blackwood family held a small media briefing. Nathaniel stood beside me and said to the cameras, "The marriage between Nathaniel Blackwood and Cassandra Hayes is a considered decision by both parties." One of the journalists asked me, "Miss Hayes, everyone says you just ended a previous engagement. Is your current choice an act of revenge?" I took the microphone and looked into the camera. "This is not revenge. This is damage control." On the day the news of our engagement was announced, Julian was in a meeting. His assistant, Daniel, told me later. He said that in the middle of the meeting, a secretary came in and whispered something in Julian's ear. Julian immediately snapped the pen in his hands. On the screen was the news feed. "Heir to Blackwood Holdings, Nathaniel Blackwood, announces engagement. The bride-to-be is renowned interior designer Cassandra Hayes." In the photograph, I stood next to Nathaniel in a light beige suit. No wedding dress, no diamond ring, no deliberate intimacy. But I was smiling calmly. Julian stared at the photo for a long time. In the conference room, no one dared to make a sound. Finally, he said only one sentence. "It's fake." Daniel, mustering his courage, reminded him, "Mr. Vance, the official Blackwood Holdings account has already confirmed it." Julian threw his phone on the table. "Get this out of the news." Daniel froze. "It's not negative news. We can't take it down. Besides, on the Blackwood side," I said, "get rid of it." Julian's voice was ice. Daniel didn't dare argue further, but the news wasn't taken down, because the Blackwoods didn't need the PR, and no one dared to pressure them about their news. That afternoon, Julian personally drove to the Blackwood offices. He saw neither me nor Nathaniel. The receptionist politely informed him that Miss Hayes was not in the office today, and Mr. Blackwood's schedule was full. Julian stood in the lobby, his face grim. For the past 3 years, he had been used to everyone making way for him. But this time, even the receptionist didn't flinch at his anger. Soon, Isabel arrived. She seemed afraid he would lose control and grabbed his arm right there in the lobby. "Julian, let's go back. Cassie is probably just angry with you and is deliberately making a scene." Julian was silent. Isabel's voice became even softer. "She loves you so much. She can't really marry someone else. A family like the Blackwoods, would they take her seriously? Maybe it's just a PR partnership." This phrase seemed to give Julian an excuse to retreat. His expression softened slightly. He wanted to believe it himself. He was afraid. But they didn't know that the date for my and Nathaniel's wedding had already been set. Not to spite Julian, but because Nathaniel's grandfather was ill and wanted to see the wedding. There wasn't much time. Nathaniel had explained everything to me beforehand, and I had rechecked all the conditions. I wasn't using marriage as a tool for revenge, but I needed a clean break. On the day of the ceremony, it was just me, Nathaniel, our lawyers, and 2 senior family members. At the city clerk's office, as the official checked our documents, I suddenly remembered the notification from 3 months ago. That day, with a swollen face, I sat on the floor of my old apartment, and instead of a marriage, I received Julian's demand to apologize to Isabel. Now, I was in a simple white dress, holding my documents. Nathaniel stood beside me and asked quietly, "Nervous?" "No," I shook my head. "Just thinking how strange life is." He didn't press. When it was time to sign, I hesitated for a second. Nathaniel looked at me. "It's not too late to change your mind." I looked up at him. "Nathaniel, you know I'm not signing this out of love for you." "I know," he said. "And you know I won't immediately become the perfect wife for the Blackwood dynasty. You don't need to be perfect." He handed me the pen. "You just need to be Cassandra Hayes." At that moment, I suddenly understood. Respect is not the same as love, but it is just as valuable. I signed my name. When we were handed our marriage certificates, my heart didn't race, and no tears came to my eyes. There was only a sense of calm, as if I were finally standing firmly on the ground. It turns out that to leave the wrong person, you don't have to create a drama. You can just close the door, click, and from that moment on, you are no longer connected. A month later, our wedding took place at the family estate. It wasn't extravagant or showy, but it was dignified. Nathaniel's grandfather sat in a wheelchair, held my hand, and said, "Cassie, Nathaniel has a reserved personality. Don't spoil him." I smiled. "All right." Nathaniel, standing beside us, sighed helplessly. "Grandfather, am I wrong?" The old man huffed. A photographer captured that moment. In the picture, for the first time in a long time, I was smiling as myself. The day before the wedding, Daniel sent me a message. "Miss Hayes, Mr. Vance has been in a very bad state lately. He still thinks you're just upset. He might try to contact you tomorrow." I replied, "Daniel, thank you for the warning, but I no longer have any relationship with him." Daniel was silent for a long time before replying, "Congratulations." I was surprised by those two words. Daniel had worked for Julian for years. He was not my friend. But he had witnessed too much. Witnessed me covering for Julian time and again after his canceled meetings. Witnessed me delivering finished projects to Vance Global late at night. And witnessed that night when Julian called him to find a watch repairman but never once asked where I had gone. On the morning of the wedding, I was in the dressing room. Chloe sat nearby, eating pastries and sighing. "Even the pastries at the Blackwood estate taste better than the air at the Vances." I laughed. The makeup artist was adjusting my veil when my phone lit up on the table. An unknown number. I didn't answer. Soon, a message from Daniel arrived. "Miss Hayes, Mr. Vance has just ordered me to tell you to be at City Hall tomorrow for the civil ceremony." I looked at the line, my fingers freezing. A second message came immediately. "I told him you announced your engagement to the heir of the Blackwood Corporation a month ago and that your wedding is today." The third came after a long delay. "He doesn't believe me. He's on his way to you." Chloe looked over my shoulder and nearly choked on her pastry. "Is he insane? He was silent for 3 months and now he's summoning you to get married?" I turned the phone face down. In the mirror, I saw myself in a wedding dress, with perfect makeup. The scars on my face were long gone, but I remembered the pain of that night very clearly. "Please continue," I told the makeup artist. "Aren't you afraid he'll cause a scene?" Chloe asked. I looked at my reflection. "I'm not afraid." I paused. "Let him come. It's better this way." At the same time, in the Vance Global penthouse, Julian was rummaging through drawers, looking for his passport. Daniel stood in the doorway, his face even grimmer than his boss's. "Mr. Vance, are you sure this is the right way to inform Miss Hayes? She's been sulking for 3 months." "It's enough," Julian replied without looking up. Daniel was silent. Julian put his passport in a folder and grabbed his car keys. 9 in the morning at the city clerk's office tomorrow. Tell her to wear that white shirt. I don't like to wait." Daniel finally couldn't hold back. "Mr. Vance, Miss Hayes might not come." "She'll come," Julian sneered. He looked up, a stubborn confidence in his eyes. "She loved me for 3 years. She can't just walk away. The news about the Blackwoods is just a way to make me back down." "But the Blackwoods have already announced the wedding date," Daniel said quietly. "And you believe that?" Julian's expression darkened. Daniel fell silent. Julian irritably loosened his tie. "Isabel's been having health problems again lately. I don't have time for Cassandra's tantrums. Tell her if she's on time tomorrow. I can forget about everything she's pulled these last 3 months." Daniel looked at him and finally understood. Some people don't fail to see the truth. They simply prefer to believe the version of it they can bear. He took out his phone and, with great difficulty, sent me the message. After reading my reply, I no longer have any relationship with him. He felt a chill. Mr. Vance, he said quietly, Miss Hayes says she no longer has any relationship with you. Julian froze. She's still angry. No. Daniel looked up. Mr. Vance, Miss Hayes announced her engagement to the wealthiest man in the country, Nathaniel Blackwood, a month ago. They already had their wedding today. A dead silence filled the office. Julian seemed not to understand. What did you say? Daniel handed him his phone. On the screen were photos from the wedding, published by the official Blackwood account. In the photo, I was in a wedding dress, standing next to Nathaniel. Nathaniel was leaning slightly, shielding me from the sun. I wasn't flinching or looking tense. I was smiling. Julian stared at the photo, the color draining from his face. Impossible. He snatched the phone and began scrolling. Clips from the live-streamed wedding, reports in business journals, photos with guests, congratulations from the Blackwood relatives. It was all real. Every new piece of information was like a delayed slap in the face. He dialed my number. The number you have reached is not in service. He tried from another number. No one answered. He ordered Daniel to drive to the wedding venue. Mr. Vance, you shouldn't go there now, Daniel hesitated. Julian turned on him with a look that seemed ready to devour him. Drive. Daniel had no choice but to obey. On the way to the estate, Julian stared relentlessly at his phone. He opened our old chat history. The last message was his. Made up your mind? From 3 months ago. I hadn't replied. He suddenly started scrolling up. He found a message from me last winter. Julian, the curtains for the apartment arrived. Will you have time to look at them tonight? His reply, busy. You choose. Further up, you have gastritis. Don't just have coffee for dinner. I ordered you some soup. His reply, leave it at the front desk. Even further up, I've revised the project materials. Don't forget to take them to the meeting tomorrow. His reply, K. The messages that had once seemed nagging, mundane, and taken for granted now filled the screen in a dense stream. For the first time, he realized that before I left, I had given him countless chances. He was the one who hadn't seen them. The car was stopped at the gates of the estate. Excuse me, this is a private wedding. Please present your invitation. I'm Julian Vance, Julian said coldly. Excuse me, sir, please present your invitation, the guard repeated politely but firmly. I need to see Cassandra Hayes, Julian said, restraining his anger. Hearing my name, the guard immediately contacted someone on his radio. A few minutes later, Nathaniel's assistant came out. Mr. Vance, Mrs. Blackwood is currently at her wedding ceremony and cannot receive guests. She's my fiancé, Julian said in an icy tone. Mr. Vance, I must ask you to choose your words carefully, the assistant replied, unruffled. As of today, Miss Hayes is now Mrs. Blackwood. Those 2 words were like a knife. Mrs. Blackwood. Julian barely stayed on his feet. He sneered. Did she say that herself? The assistant pointed to a large screen in the main banquet hall. The ceremony was being broadcast. I was standing under a floral arch facing Nathaniel. The officiant was asking, Miss Cassandra Hayes, do you agree to take Mr. Nathaniel Blackwood as your husband, to respect and support each other in your future life? I held the microphone. My voice was firm. I do. The camera panned across the hall. Applause erupted. Julian stood outside the gates, his face deathly pale. Mr. Vance, let's go, Daniel said quietly. But Julian suddenly lunged forward. The security guards immediately blocked his path. The commotion reached the banquet hall just as the ceremony ended. He's here, Chloe whispered in my ear. I nodded. Nathaniel looked at me. Should I handle it? No need. I shook my head. I lifted the hem of my dress and headed towards the exit of the hall. The guests, noticing something was amiss, began to exchange glances. Outside the door, Julian, restrained by security, with a crooked tie and reddened eyes, saw me and froze. He had imagined me in a wedding dress. He had once said, Cassandra, don't cry at your wedding, you'll ruin your makeup. But he never thought that when he actually saw me in a wedding dress, the groom would not be him. Cassandra, he rasped. I stood on the steps, looking at him from a distance of a few feet. Mr. Vance, is something wrong? That form of address made his face even paler. Come with me. He was still lost in his dream. Stop sulking. Behind me, I could hear the guests whispering. I heard someone ask, Is that Julian Vance? The one who beat his fiancé over his ex? And he still dared to come here? Julian heard it too. His pride was wounded, and his tone became sharper. Cassandra, we are going to City Hall tomorrow. I can pretend today never happened. I looked at him and suddenly wanted to laugh. Pretend it never happened? Julian, by what right? He stared at me intently. By the right of you having loved me. That phrase silenced everyone around us. I looked at him. Yes, I did love you. For a moment, a light flickered in his eyes. But I continued. But I was in pain. I woke up. And I left. I held up my hand, showing the wedding ring on my finger. And now I'm married. He stared at the ring as if it were a red-hot piece of iron. Take it off, I scoffed. Who do you think you are? At that moment, Nathaniel approached me. He didn't take my hand or speak for me. He simply handed me a spare microphone. The gesture was simple, but it made it clear to everyone. Today, I was handling this problem myself. I took the microphone and looked at Julian. Mr. Vance, since you're here, I might as well clarify a few things publicly. The moment the microphone turned on, all conversation at the entrance to the hall ceased. Julian looked at me, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He probably hadn't expected me to actually say everything in public. Before, I had always protected his reputation. When he had project problems, I covered for him. When his mother nitpicked, I endured it. When he flirted with Isabel, I was afraid of ruining the relationship and held back time and again. So he thought I would always protect his reputation. I held the microphone, my voice carrying throughout the hall. Mr. Julian Vance, there is no legal marital relationship between us, nor do any active marital obligations exist. The notice of engagement termination was delivered by a notary 3 months ago. Your refusal to accept it does not change that fact. Julian's face turned ugly. Cassandra, I didn't stop. Today, I am the wife of Mr. Nathaniel Blackwood. I ask you to no longer refer to me as your fiancé or wife, and to stop misleading others by using the word wife. Gasps rippled through the guests. Daniel, standing to the side, lowered his head even further. Julian's fingers clenched until they were white. Do you really have to humiliate me like this? I looked at him. Humiliate? That word sounds so funny. I pointed to my face. On the eve of our wedding, you slapped me 6 times and kicked me out of our apartment over an old watch given to you by Isabel. Were you thinking about humiliation then? Julian's pupils constricted. Whispers immediately erupted all around. 6 slaps? Over a watch? My God, he's violent even before the wedding. Julian finally panicked. It was a misunderstanding. All right, explain. I nodded, holding the microphone out to him. Explain to everyone why you hit me. He opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word. Because any explanation would trap him. To say I broke the watch on purpose? He had no proof. To say he was in a fit of rage? Rage is no excuse for violence. To say Isabel was precious to him? That would be even more ridiculous. His silence was the answer. At that moment, a quiet, trembling voice came from behind the crowd. Cassie, don't torture him like this. I looked up. Isabel had arrived. She was in a white dress, her eyes red. 2 people with cameras followed her. Reporters. That bitch, she even timed it perfectly, Chloe whispered beside me. Isabel walked up to Julian, as if mustering her courage, and addressed me. Cassie, I know you hate me, but today is your wedding. Why bring up old grievances in public? With one sentence, she positioned herself as the victim. The reporters' cameras immediately focused on me. That watch was an old gift I gave to Julian, Isabel continued. But I never wanted to compete with you. You're married to Mr. Blackwood now. You've already won. Why do you need to destroy Julian? I looked at her and realized how clever she was. She didn't deny the watch, the old feelings, or the fact that Julian hit me. She simply shifted the focus to me, the woman who, despite marrying a Blackwood, couldn't let go and continued to persecute her ex. If I lost my temper now, tomorrow's headlines would scream, Blackwood's new wife settles scores with ex at her own wedding. First love begs for forgiveness in tears. Unfortunately for her, I was no longer the person from 3 months ago who could be provoked with a few phrases. Excuse me, which publication are you from? I asked the reporters. They froze for a moment. One of them named his outlet. Good. I nodded. Since you're here, please film everything in detail. Isabel's face changed. I turned to her. Miss Sterling, you say I'm destroying Julian Vance. Tell me, 3 months ago, on the eve of our wedding, did I force him to hit me? She bit her lip. I didn't mean that. Then what did you mean? I took a step forward. You say you didn't want to compete. Then why, knowing that I was at the apartment that day unpacking, Did you call Julian beforehand and remind him to come check on that very watch? Isabel's face went white. Julian turned to her sharply. Isabel? No, Cassie. You can't lie like that just because you hate me, she immediately wailed. I took my phone out of my purse. Would you like to hear the recording? Isabel's eyes filled with terror. I played the recording of our conversation in the corridor. Her voice, clear and distinct, came from the speakers. I knew where that watch was. And that day, before I called him, I knew you were in the apartment unpacking. A dead silence fell. The recording continued. So, what if you were with Julian for 3 years? He's still most attached to me. The moment I come back, he won't look at anyone else. Every phrase stripped away her mask of innocence. Isabel staggered. That's not it. Julian. I was just angry then. Julian's face was blacker than a thundercloud. He looked at Isabel as if seeing her for the first time. But I didn't give him time for dramatic reflection. I motioned for Chloe. She handed me a folder of documents. I took out the assault report, screenshots from the security cameras, and a printout of the smart home system backup. This is the medical report for the assault on the eve of our wedding. I placed it on a presentation stand. And this is the footage from the elevator camera as I was leaving the apartment. The large screen immediately showed the video. There I was, with a swollen face, blood on my lips, my hand wrapped in a napkin, leaving the elevator alone. No Julian, no Isabel, no one to check on my condition. Someone in the hall quietly swore, "That's just too much." Julian stared at the screen, the blood draining from his face. "Cassandra, I didn't know you were hurt that badly," he whispered. "Of course you didn't know." My voice was even. "You never asked." That phrase hit even Julian hard. Isabel was still trying to say something, but I played the next file. And these are all of Miss Sterling's posts from the last 3 months, with insinuations that made everyone think I broke off the engagement out of jealousy. The reporter's cameras immediately turned to Isabel. She covered her face with her hands in panic. "Don't film me." "And this," I continued, "is the recording of my conversation with your mother-in-law, in which she demands that I apologize to Miss Sterling and pay for the watch repair." Julian snapped his head up. "My mother spoke to you? There's a lot you don't know," I looked at him. "Not because you weren't told, but because you never wanted to know." At that moment, Julian's mother came running. She had obviously rushed over after hearing the news, without even time to fix her makeup. As she entered, she saw the evidence on the large screen, and her face changed instantly. "Cassandra Hayes, today is your wedding? Did you have to disgrace both families?" I looked at her and smiled. "You're just in time." I held up another document. "Here are also the property deeds for the apartment, the renovation bills, the details of Vance Global's debt, and screenshots of your messages where you call me an ungrateful bitch." Julian's mother's face turned ashen. "Since everyone is here," I said, enunciating each word, "let the Vance family publicly answer. Are you going to repay your debts? Or will you continue to spread rumors that I broke off the engagement out of jealousy over Isabel?" A complete silence fell over the hall. Julian's mother's lips trembled, but she couldn't utter a word. Julian stood frozen, as if finally realizing that this situation couldn't be fixed with his usual, "Stop sulking." I placed the microphone back on the stand. My wedding is no place for troublemakers. I looked at the security. "Please escort them out." Julian's head snapped up. "Cassandra." I didn't look at him. "From this moment on, if Mr. Vance attempts to invade my personal space again, I will call the police." The security guards approached. Isabel clung to Julian's sleeve in tears. Julian's mother, her face ashen, stumbled backward, and I turned and walked back into the banquet hall. Nathaniel was waiting for me at the entrance. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said quietly, "It's time to cut the cake." I looked at him and suddenly smiled. "Let's go." The chaos behind me was left behind closed doors. Inside, it was warm with light and applause. I lifted the hem of my wedding dress and walked towards my new life. The video from the wedding went viral that same evening, not because of the Blackwoods. The reporters Isabel had brought couldn't resist. They had expected to film a drama of first love and tears at ex's wedding, shrewish bride settles scores. Instead, they filmed Julian crashing the wedding, Isabel's downfall with the recording, the Vance family's attempt to force an apology, and me leaving the house with an injured face. Public opinion did a complete 180. That night, the top trending topics on X were Cassandra Hayes, 6 slaps, followed by First Love's watch, and Julian Vance wedding crash. Chloe sat in the bridal suite, scrolling through the news feed, her eyes gleaming. "Look, this comment is hilarious. Mr. Vance summons fiancé for City Hall wedding. Fiancé, sorry, I'm married, do not disturb. I was taking off my veil, and hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. But after the laughter came exhaustion. The satisfaction was real. But exposing old wounds was also painful. Nathaniel knocked and entered. Chloe, very tactfully, grabbed some pastries and scurried out. He placed a glass of warm water next to me. We can have some of the news taken down. No need, I shook my head. No need to take anything down. He looked at me. I don't want to be silent for others' sake anymore. For the past 3 months, I've been waiting for the right moment. Not for everyone to pity me, but for those who once sided with the Vances and judged me to see the whole truth. All right, Nathaniel nodded. He didn't try to persuade me. He just said that if I was tired, the rest of the program could be canceled. I looked at myself in the mirror. The wedding dress was still on, the makeup intact. Don't cancel. I stood up. Tonight is not the night of Julian Vance's repentance. Tonight is my wedding. The celebration continued. I accepted congratulations, cut the cake, and took photos with Nathaniel's relatives. I took every step with confidence. Only at 11 at night, when the guests had departed, was I finally able to sit down. My phone had dozens of missed calls. From Julian, from his mother, from unknown numbers. I didn't answer a single one. The next morning, my lawyer called. Vance Global wants to settle. The terms, I said. Repayment of the principal debt, payment of interest, a public apology, retraction of all false rumors about you, and cooperation in vacating the apartment. Do they agree? They don't want to, the lawyer chuckled. But they're afraid you'll keep publishing evidence. I looked out the window. Then we continue. At 12 noon, my studio's official account published a second statement. This time, it wasn't just a short notice. I laid out all the evidence in chronological order. 3 years ago, my engagement to Julian Vance. 2 years ago, I began providing design resources for some of Vance Global's projects. 1 year ago, Vance Global faces financial difficulties. I contribute personal funds to cover project costs. 3 months ago, on the eve of our wedding, Julian Vance assaults me over a damaged watch given to him by Isabel Sterling. Subsequently, the Vance family demands compensation for the watch, an apology to Isabel, and, threatening my reputation, tries to force me to continue the engagement. At the end of the statement, I wrote, I can accept a failed relationship, but I cannot accept violence being silenced. I cannot accept my contributions being appropriated and then being blamed for it. I cannot accept anyone trampling on my dignity under the pretext of past feelings. 10 minutes after it was published, the comments exploded. Many women shared their own stories. Some wrote that they too had faced violence from a partner before a wedding, but relatives had persuaded them not to air dirty laundry in public. Some wrote that seeing how I saved evidence made them realize that the phrase, "don't make a scene," sometimes protects the abuser. And someone wrote that my sentence, "I don't want anyone else to be silent for my sake," brought tears to their eyes. I read these comments, and my heart felt bittersweet. It turns out my pain was not just mine. In the afternoon, Vance Global began to have problems with its partners. The Blackwood Company didn't boycott them. But other partners, seeing the evidence, naturally began to reassess the personal risks associated with Julian Vance. An heir to a company can have an old flame, can have emotions. But he cannot raise his hand to his fiancée on the eve of their wedding. And he certainly cannot be embroiled in unpaid debts and copyright disputes. Vance Global's stock took a noticeable dip that day. Julian's father finally returned from abroad. The first thing he did was not to seek me out. He called an emergency meeting at Vance Global. As Daniel later recounted, in the conference room, Julian's father threw a stack of documents on the table. I didn't hand this company over to you so you could drag Vance Global to the bottom over some woman. Julian was silent. His mother tried to defend him. Cassandra is also to blame. She was too aggressive. His father looked at her coldly. She was aggressive? Is the debt a fact? Is the assault a fact? The fact that you demanded she apologize and pay for the watch, is that a fact? Julian's mother's face turned ashen. Isabel sat to the side with red eyes. She had thought the Vance family would protect her, but as soon as it came to the interests of Vance Global, her meekness instantly became worthless. Julian's father turned to her. Miss Sterling, your recent posts on the internet with unambiguous insinuations have caused serious damage to Vance Global's reputation. Our lawyers will be in contact with you. Isabel was frightened. Mr. Vance, I didn't mean any harm, I just what? Julian's father cut her off. Just enjoyed watching my son humiliate his fiancée for you? Just knowing that watch would cause a conflict deliberately provoked it? Just brought reporters to someone else's wedding? Isabel couldn't even cry anymore. Enough! Julian finally spoke. His father looked at him with disappointment. It's not enough. Julian, you're still defending her. Julian was silent, because he himself didn't know if he was defending Isabel or that youthful stubbornness of his that had prevented him from admitting his mistake for decades. That evening, Julian came to see me. He didn't enter the Blackwood estate. He just stood outside the gates and asked the security to tell me he wanted to talk. I didn't go out. Half an hour later, he sent a long message. Cassandra, I watched the security footage. That night you left, I really didn't come after you. I'm sorry. I always thought you would never leave, and so I missed a lot. I was wrong about the watch. I will deal with Isabel too. Can we meet? I read it and didn't reply. A late apology is not a key. It cannot open a door I have already locked. On the third day, Julian was ambushed by reporters outside the Vance Global headquarters. He was trying to announce a new project, but all the questions were about me. Mr. Vance, do you admit that you raised your hand to Miss Hayes on the eve of your wedding? Does Vance Global really owe Miss Hayes money? Was Miss Isabel Sterling the reason for your breakup with Miss Hayes? Julian stood at the podium with a pale face. The statement prepared by the PR team was smooth, but the reporters were relentless. Someone played a clip from my wedding video on the big screen. My phrase, "You never asked," echoed through the hall again. Julian's fingers trembled slightly. He finally bowed his head before the cameras. I admit that I caused pain to Miss Cassandra Hayes. I offer her my sincerest apologies. The camera flashes were incessant. Do you still love Miss Hayes? That question silenced the room for a moment. Julian raised his head. His gaze pierced through the lenses, as if he were looking at me. I do, he said, but I realized it too late. I sat in my studio, watched the broadcast to the end, and simply turned off the computer. How do you feel? Chloe asked. I thought for a moment. Like I'm watching someone else's story. She froze for a moment, then smiled. That's good. Yes, the ability to watch his suffering as if it were someone else's story meant I had finally moved on. Julian's public apology didn't save Vance Global. Because apologies can appease some public opinion, but they don't repay debts or resolve copyright disputes. On the day of the court settlement, my lawyer and I arrived early. Julian came very early. He was in a dark suit, with obvious dark circles under his eyes. Seeing me, he stood up, as if wanting to say a lot. I gave him no opportunity for a private conversation. Mr. Vance, let's stick to business. That form of address made his gaze dim. During the settlement, my lawyer listed the demands point by point. Vance Global's principal debt of $2.8 million, plus interest, for a total of over $3 million. The penthouse to be vacated within 15 days. For the unlicensed use of my studio's materials, payment of royalties, and a public correction. Julian's mother, sitting beside him, was barely restraining herself. When she heard about vacating the penthouse, she couldn't hold back. Cassandra, you lived in that apartment too. How can you be so cruel? I lived in it because it's my apartment. I looked at her. She fell silent. You and Julian were together for 3 years. Can't you show a little compassion? I did, I said, pushing the assault report towards her. Before those 6 slaps, I showed it many times. Julian's mother's lips trembled, but she said no more. I'll move out, Julian said quietly. Julian! His mother looked at him sharply. He didn't look at her. Mom, that's enough. It was the first time he had ever stopped his mother in my presence, but nothing stirred in my heart. A late defense is like an umbrella after the rain. The rain has long since passed. After signing the agreement, Julian followed me to the courthouse exit. My lawyer and Chloe were waiting for me ahead. Cassandra, can I have 10 minutes? He asked quietly. I stopped. Do you have some other business? Is it only business between us now? He laughed bitterly. And old scores. I looked at him. But we just settled those. Pain flickered in his eyes. I know you hate me. You're mistaken, I said calmly. I don't hate you anymore. Those words wounded him even more deeply. Then why can't you give me a chance? I looked at the people bustling at the courthouse entrance. Julian, you still don't understand one thing. What? I didn't leave you to punish you. I turned to him. I left to save myself. His throat tightened. You're hurting now because you lost someone who was unconditionally good to you. And I was hurting then because I realized that in your eyes, I wasn't even a replacement. I was just a thing that could be hurt at any moment and summoned back at any moment. Julian's face turned ashen. No. When you ordered me to come for the wedding, you didn't even ask how I had been living for those 3 months. You just decided the time had come and I should return. That sentence was more painful than any accusation, because it was the truth. He had remembered me after 3 months not out of love, but because he decided the Cold War should end, that he had punished me enough, that I should have learned my lesson. But he didn't know that in 3 months, a heart can die completely. As I was about to leave, he suddenly took a box from his briefcase. This watch. I had it fixed. I looked. Inside the box was the same old watch Isabel had given him. The crystal was intact, the strap new. The second hand was still ticking. I found out later, Julian said quietly, that Isabel deliberately provoked you that day. The watch wasn't your fault. So what? I scoffed. I'm giving it to you. His voice trembled. You can throw it away, smash it, whatever you want. Julian, you still don't get it. I shook my head. He froze. I don't need to deal with it. I looked at the watch. It belongs to you and your past with Isabel. It has nothing to do with me. I pushed the box away. You can consider it your life or a joke, but you don't need to show it to me anymore. His hand was left hanging in the air. I turned and walked towards Chloe. Behind me, his voice, choked to the limit, called out, Cassandra, I was really wrong. I didn't turn back. Being wrong means being wrong. Not every I was wrong can be met with an, it's okay. Meanwhile, things were not going well for Isabel either. Vance Global's lawyers officially sued her for intentional dissemination of false information, demanding a public apology and compensation for reputational damage. The brands she had started collaborating with quickly terminated their contracts. Those who had once admired her gentleness and kindness in the comments now changed their tune and called her a schemer. She tried to meet with Julian. She waited for him outside the Vance Global office for 3 hours. In the end, Daniel came out to see her. He handed her a document. Miss Sterling, Mr. Vance asked me to convey that you are not to contact him again. Isabel couldn't believe it. I want to see him. Mr. Vance will not see you, Daniel replied calmly. He can't do this to me. Isabel's tears started to flow. He said he would always protect me. Daniel looked at her and couldn't help himself. Miss Sterling, the person you both wronged, also once thought Mr. Vance would protect her. Isabel's face went white. She finally understood. All those moments she had won over Cassandra were based on Julian's bias, and when that bias disappeared, she was left with nothing. Half a month later, the penthouse was vacated. I didn't go to inspect it personally. My lawyer handled it with a representative from the management company. Many things from the apartment had been moved out. Julian's mother took her favorite tea set. Julian took his old things from the study. All traces of Isabel's presence were also erased. But on the coffee table in the living room, a box was left behind. Inside it was the very same engagement ring. Next to it, a note written by Julian. Cassandra, I'm waiting for you. My lawyer took a photo and sent it to me. I glanced at it and instructed him to send the ring and the note back to Vance Global. With a cover letter, please dispose of any personal items left behind. Mrs. Blackwood is no longer accepting any personal gifts. Hearing this, Chloe burst out laughing and clapped her hands. Excellent! That's the way to do it. I smiled too, without the bitterness I had expected, even with a sense of lightness. I later had that apartment completely renovated. I removed the desk from the study, leaving an empty wall in its place. The designer asked me, shall we hang a painting on the empty wall? No need. I shook my head. Some spaces are best left empty. There's no need to fill them with old things. A year later, the art hotel officially opened on the coast. It was my largest solo project. On the opening day, a strong sea breeze was blowing, the white curtains billowing gently. The sun reflected off the glass walls, scattering into thousands of silver specks. I stood on the terrace, watching the guests enter the lobby. Chloe, taking my arm, said with a smile, Madam Lead Designer, may I have an interview? What does it feel like to rise after a fall? I thought for a moment. It's not a rise. Then what is it? It's when you stand up straight again. She froze for a moment, then smiled and hugged me. Over that year, my relationship with Nathaniel had been very steady. We lived under the same roof but maintained our personal space. He never asked about my past or used his family's resources to control me. His grandfather recovered and sometimes called me, reminding me not just to work but also to come home for dinner. I knew that this marriage was not initially based on love, but it gave me a long-forgotten sense of order and respect. As for what would happen next, I was in no hurry. I had already passed the stage where I needed to prove my worth through a relationship. After the opening ceremony, An assistant approached me and said quietly, "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Vance has arrived." I froze for a moment. I hadn't seen him in a year. The name Julian Vance had almost disappeared from my life. Vance Global had undergone a management change. Julian's father had taken back control. Julian was relegated to secondary projects. Isabel, after a public apology, had disappeared for a while. Rumor had it she moved to another city. Everyone had paid their price. I thought the story was over. I didn't expect him to come. "Does he have an invitation?" I asked. "Yes," the assistant replied. "A standard guest ticket." "Then there's no reason to kick him out." I nodded. "Treat him as a regular guest." Half an hour later, I saw Julian on the waterfront promenade. He was dressed much more modestly than before. He stood in the wind, holding a box. Seeing me, he didn't approach immediately. Only when I got closer did he say quietly, "Cassandra, long time no see." "Mr. Vance," I nodded. He gave a bitter smile. "You don't even call me by my name anymore." I looked out at the sea. "There's no need." He was silent for a long time, then held out the box to me. "I came today to give this to you." I didn't take it. "If it's the ring or the watch, you can take it back." His fingers tightened. He opened the box. Inside, of course, was the same old watch. The crystal was intact, the second hand ticking. "This whole year," Julian said quietly, "I've thought about that night. If I had seen your hand first. If I hadn't hit you. If I had run out after you." "There are no if-onlys," I interrupted him. His eyes turned red. "I know." He looked at the watch. "I didn't bring it for you to deal with. I brought it to say that I don't wear it anymore." I looked at him. "Julian, whether you wear it or not is your business. You don't need to report it to me." He seemed to stumble back half a step. My voice was calm. "Before, I cared because I loved you. I was hurt by it because it proved there was someone else in your heart. But now, I don't care." The sea breeze carried a salty scent. He looked at me, his eyes no longer holding that old confidence, only belated memories. "Cassandra, can I still fix things?" I smiled. "You already have." He froze. "You returned the money, apologized, moved out, and faced the consequences. That is what you needed to fix. And our feelings?" His voice was hoarse. I looked at him. "There's no fixing feelings. I once thought feelings could be repaired too, like this watch. A broken crystal can be replaced. A torn strap can be changed. But then I realized that some things, once broken, will never be the same, no matter how perfectly they are repaired. Especially trust. It shatters silently. And by the time you notice, the floor is already covered in shards." "Did you love me?" Julian asked quietly. I didn't evade the question. I did. Something flickered in his eyes. But that was the old me, the old Cassandra, who could stay up until midnight for a single good night, who redid the apartment design over and over because of one disapproving comment from his mother, who secretly suffered because of Isabel's posts but pretended to be magnanimous. That Cassandra truly loved him, and she truly died that night, on the eve of the wedding, from 6 slaps. A tear finally rolled down Julian's cheek. He raised his hand to wipe it, but, as if ashamed, held back. "Is Nathaniel good to you?" I looked into the distance. Nathaniel was on the terrace, talking to guests. He wasn't looking our way, not interfering. But I knew that if I needed him, he would be there. "He respects me," I said. "That's more important than many promises." Julian gave a bitter smile. "I could have done that too. It's not that you couldn't." I shook my head, looking him in the eye. "You just didn't think I was worthy of it." After those words, he finally fell silent. I didn't linger any longer. "Mr. Vance, I have a hotel opening today. Many guests. I wish you luck in the future. Will we ever see each other again?" he rasped. I thought for a moment. "If it's at public events, perhaps? If it's in a personal capacity, we shouldn't." I turned and walked away. After a few steps, he suddenly shouted after me, "Cassandra!" I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. The wind carried those 2 words very clearly. I closed my eyes and walked on. Without forgiveness, without resentment. I just walked on. Nathaniel was waiting for me at the entrance to the terrace. He handed me a cup of hot tea. "All settled?" I took the cup. He glanced at Julian's retreating figure but said nothing. He only asked, "Grandfather was just asking when you'll be home for dinner." I smiled. "Tonight." "Good," he nodded. We walked side by side towards the lobby. The sun streamed through the glass roof, bathing the floor in bright light. I suddenly remembered that night a year ago. I was sitting in a hospital corridor with a swollen face and a bandaged hand, with an assault report on my phone. Back then, it felt like I had lost everything. But now, looking back, I understand. That wasn't the end. It was the first day I finally started to find myself. Later, many people asked me if I regretted not turning back that night. I always answer that I don't. Because in every person's life, there should be a moment when they close a door for their own sake. Behind that door, someone might be crying, someone might be shouting, someone might be offering late apologies. But I, on this side of the door, can finally sleep peacefully, not waiting for anyone's messages, not wondering who is more important, not proving my worth through someone else's old feelings. I am not Isabel's replacement. I am not the wife Julian Vance will sooner or later call back. And I am not an appendage to... I am Cassandra Hayes. I fell, I was hurt, I sobered up, and then I got back on my feet.